Hey, and welcome back. I am really excited to talk to you about the TrueCar presentation and introduce you to Matt Jones and Eric Gordon. Matt is the Director of Communications at TrueCar, and Eric is the Senior Director of Retail Solutions. And they're going to be talking to us about remote retail, and AKA perhaps digital retailing, more known perhaps by some people as just modern retailing. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'll kick it over to you, Matt, to bring your presentation live, and you all can take off and make us a little bit smarter.
Thank you, David, for having us. We're so happy to be here with you. Especially, I mean, in person would be better, but we make do with what we've got. And Eric and I are super thrilled to talk to you about the age of remote retail, bringing the showroom to the customer. We're really going to be going over some of the things that we've learned in COVID. And a lot of people say post-COVID, although we're still in it. If you hear me say post-COVID, I'm not talking about what's happening in the future. I just mean right now. So just wanted to clear that up right now. But why don't we kick off?
Your optimism will eventually get there.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. I need to be able to go to the beach. That's why I live in California. So we're going to get there. I'm hopeful. Eric, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. And David, thanks so much for having us. We're really excited to be here. My name is Eric Gordon, Senior Director of Retail Solutions at TrueCar. And I come from the digital retailing space at a prior company, and really excited to bring a lot of what I've learned and developed at that company to TrueCar. And excited to show everyone what we have to offer today, what we offer our dealerships, and really driving the digital engagement with our consumers on the TrueCar.com platform. So
that's awesome. A little about me. I've been in automotive for about 20 years now. The first 12 years were in the retail space. I started on the sales floor in Southern California and worked the floor for 4 or 5 years and eventually transitioned into management. And all told, I spent 12 years in the retail arm of automotive. Wow. The last 8 years, I've been in the education space. And what I really do is I study consumers and share that information with dealers. And at the same time, I translate what's going on in the dealership world to consumers. And the idea is to try to bridge the communication between buyers and sellers. So when we eventually do get together, hopefully the deal will be more smooth and more seamless, and that's just a win for everybody. So now that we all know who everybody is, I'm going to steal the screen a little bit. I'm going to just jump into this presentation, if I may. Oh, let's get in here. Now, I'm going to guess that everybody on the call is pretty familiar with TrueCar. I mean, this is an automotive summit after all. But one thing we wanted to make sure that everybody on the call was aware of is TrueCar Access, which is one of our newest offerings, which enables dealers to offer a full remote retailing experience, which includes VIN-specific pricing, VIN-specific trade-in offers, VIN-specific payments. And all this can be done online, or it can be done in the store. And what we're really trying to do is help people who want to really just effectively engage in a remote experience. Now, I think that we could just jump into the meat of this conversation. And it's really the pandemic. And the pandemic has just changed everything about automotive retail. It's changed consumer behavior, and it's challenged dealers to modernize their strategies and processes. And I think it's fair to say that prior to COVID, some dealers embraced digital retailing or modern retailing or whatever we want to call it, but other dealerships were resistant. In this environment, though, for a lot of dealers, remote retailing really came the key to survival, especially with the onset of COVID. Because even when the pandemic really hit us in March, shoppers still had a need for a vehicle. And in some cases, car shoppers' needs had actually increased because of reluctancy to get on, ride sharing or public transportation. But there were challenges, and we're talking about challenges that went beyond, dealership forced closures or mandatory stay-at-home mandates. Many customers were simply hesitant to spend any significant time in a dealership, if it could, for fear or catching or spreading the virus. In fact, 43% of shoppers that we surveyed back in March said that fear or catching that virus was keeping them from car shopping. But these car shoppers also said that they craved ways to complete portions of a car deal from the safety of their own homes. And that craving or that desire, whatever you want to call it, it was influenced by their experiences buying stuff outside of retail. So many people in our industry, we kind of had to shift in order to match up with the new customer expectations. Now, again, I know you guys all know TrueCar, and I expect most of you on the call know that TrueCar has an incredible amount of transaction data. But I think what gets lost sometimes is that TrueCar also has an incredible amount of consumer data and not just behavior data. And one of the reasons we have this is because we regularly survey our customers. We actually have a research team that does these surveys quarterly, biannually, and we wanted to share some of that information with you. We asked these customers back in March, as we started to understand what the pandemic was, is what remote retail offerings could inspire engagement with a dealer? And if you look, you'll see on the left side of the screen, we have a date, we have a March, and above that we have September. If you look at March, back in March, 34% of respondents saying, hey, configuring a deal online might allow me to feel more comfortable with, dealing with a dealer. But now in September, that number's 41%. Getting a test drive at home, back in March, a quarter of respondents said, yeah, I'm about that, but now it's 37%. Complete the purchase online. Everything that we would normally call a remote retail activity has seen an uptick in desire from shoppers, even as the fear of catching the virus has minimized and diminished. These tools and these abilities that people want has actually increased. Although these things have increased, it's really important that we make it clear. I want to make this very clear right now, is that consumers do not want to do everything online. Most consumers need to touch a vehicle. They want to feel that vehicle. In fact, 64% of shoppers said they would not purchase a car without a test drive. So make sure that if you don't take anything away from this, we are telling you right now, we don't think people want to buy completely online. So we want to make sure we get that clear. But we do want to also make clear that consumers have said they would like to do some aspects of the car shopping process online. 68% said they'd like to complete a credit app. 62% said they'd like to do the paperwork or negotiate a deal remotely, but they don't want to completely exclude the dealer out of the process. They just want to do some parts, and that depends on the person online. So knowing that, we're going to talk about two key opportunities to bring the showroom to the customer, knowing that a lot of these shoppers want to do some aspects of car buying online. And there's many opportunities to enhance your retail experience, but we're really just going to talk about these two key opportunities: trade-ins and payments. And here's why. We've learned that dealers that offer a digital retail experience, including trade-ins and VIN-specific payments, see a 100%, 180% lift in close rate. And it's important to note, it's really important to note that these dealers did not just see this lift in close rates because simply they offered our tools. Our tools are great, but they're not made of magic. We really want to point out that these folks created a process that used the tools, but had a process in place that connected the dots between the consumer experiences that they have online and what they eventually did in person or over the phone. So let's just jump in. We're going to talk about online trade values. We're going to talk about how you can leverage upfront online trade values to enhance your remote retailing experience if that's something that you're jumping into. First and foremost, we want to talk about this. We want to talk about actually the personal and the human aspect of trade-ins. Because when it comes to a trade-in, there tends to be a lot of sensitivity involved. For the folks on the call, I don't know if you had seen this, but TrueCar deployed a fantastic consumer study earlier this year. It went live back in August. It got a lot of media play in places like People, and we really surveyed consumers and said, what does your car mean to you in the pandemic? And it's really interesting to hear how much consumers actually love their cars. 2/3 of them think of their vehicle as a friend. 69%, almost 70% of people say that their car is an extension of their family. It's part of their home. 1/3 of car owners revealed that emotional attachment to their car has led them to name the car. 1/4 of people confessed to shedding a tear when it came to say goodbye to their car. Now, the reason we're telling you this is just to reinforce the fact these folks who have cars, they don't sell cars. This is not a commodity to them. This is something that they love as part of their family. So when we talk to them about their trade-in values and we talk to them about moving on from that car to the next car, we actually have to come with a lot of value and a lot of sensitivity, assuming considering how much they love them. Now I'm going to hand it over to Eric to tell a little bit more about the consumer experience.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. So specifically when consumers are looking to get a value in their trade, what's really important is that instant gratification. So assuming they're willing to put in some level of detail, by providing quick and easy things, it's really important for them to have instant gratification on what their trade value is. And then the next step of that is understanding how that trade tool got to their specific value. So understanding the why, whether it's the mileage or tire condition or even the specific color, once they can understand that, they feel much more confident in how we got to the trade, and also be able to feel more trusted with that dealer that they're choosing to bring their trade to. So even things like common problems, being able to highlight those, consumers are able to understand, okay, maybe my car doesn't have that problem now, but when I'm trading it into a dealership, they need to know those common problems to be able to identify what the value may be in the future.
Absolutely. And we all know that consumers value third-party validation. In fact, 65% of shoppers use a third-party website to really put a stamp on their trade-in value. And in our experience, giving a customer the opportunity to get some validation above and beyond just what your dealership is saying, it really goes miles and miles in helping them feel at ease and feel comfortable that everything is actually on the up and up. Now, one of the other things you're going to hear us talk about in the course of this is making sure that when you're dealing with these customers in person or remotely, is that we connect the dots from the offline experience to the online experience. So making sure that whatever the consumer sees on their online experience, whichever tool they're using, matches the experience that they have in person or what they're seeing is critical, because as we all know who sold, if there's not a lot of room for error or miscommunication when it comes to a deal, especially in an area that's so sensitive that people have shown sensitivity around, particularly which is trade-ins. Now, what we've also found is that shoppers that interact with online tools, and this is from our data, from our customers, are highly engaged. Now, 83% of shoppers that start the appraisal process actually complete it. And because of transaction data, we know that the close rates for people who engage with these types of tools are also higher by a measure of 51%. Now, I'd love to say that this tool usage is actually the one that's spurring the higher closing rate. That may not necessarily be accurate, but it's certainly a great indicator of knowing, hey, this person is fully engaged because they went through this process. Now, we're going to step into the second tool that you can do to really increase your remote retailing experience, and that's customizable online payments. Online monthly payments are a critical piece of the equation for today's car buyers. Many on the call may know this, but it's a good reminder. 85% of buyers are using some sort of financing to pay for their new vehicle, whether that be leasing or traditional payments. So it should really come as no surprise that 76% of shoppers want to calculate and compare monthly payments online.
The really interesting thing is we've launched digital retailing on TrueCar.com, and we've found a lot of interesting information on how you could potentially apply this to your digital retailing strategies on your website. So specifically, when consumers want the flexibility to customize their deal and go through the payment flow of whether it's a lease or finance, it's really critical, because we're able to identify those consumers that are already further down the car buying funnel. And once they start engaging, we know that they're lower funnel, higher engaging consumers that are more ready to buy. So if we look at the statistics that we've found, 35% of shoppers that engage with payments have a 94% higher close rate once they submit those payments to the dealers. So again, this isn't necessarily magic in increasing close rates specifically for these consumers, but on top of it, we're identifying the consumers that are farther down the funnel that we're able to engage with our payment flow. And again, I want you to take the same digital retailing tactics and apply it to your site. By engaging consumers on those payments, you're able to identify and move them farther along the car buying process.
Before we wrap up, we wanted to leave you with a couple takeaways. As you can see, offering customer more upfront information can be a great indicator. And if you've got competition that's not doing this, it can certainly be a differentiator for your store in your customers' eyes. But it's important to note that just offering these experiences in terms of widgets or however you go about it, that's not really enough. We truly have to integrate these thought processes and these ideas into the whole marketing and sales experience. So these are some of the takeaways that we wanted you to see. These are examples from real dealers who are doing some great things, integrating the whole idea into their experience for their customers. So put yourself in a customer's position for a second. That's what we're going to do for our takeaway section. Offer the consumer different paths to purchase. Now, we know that this is effective. But most consumers aren't, as we said earlier, aren't looking to buy 100% online. They're just looking to do pieces of that experience online. So we need to enable them to do that. And here's an example of a real dealer that's putting their value proposition right front and center with the consumer. And I'm going to pause here for a second. I think most of us on the call, have sold cars or in the automotive space, and we've all worked at dealerships that have done something really, really cool. But our consumers didn't necessarily know that we did something really, really cool unless they interacted with a specific person. So our advice here is if you got something special, put it front and center. This dealership's talking about their delivery options, their trade-in value right up front. But this is what we really wanted to point out. Not only are they showing what a consumer can do on their site, yikes, but they're calling out to the consumer what the benefit for them is. Value my trade. Well, that can save you 30 minutes online. Customize my payments. That can save 50 minutes. Pre-qualify. So not only are they showing it, they're showing the customer the benefit to them. Again, bringing awareness of your remote retail offerings through your marketing. Here's another dealership on the left side of the screen that's not leaving it to chance that their customer is going to know what sets them apart in the marketplace, their buyer's advantage, or we bring the car home. Second dealer right in the middle is giving the shopper the opportunity front and center right on the VDP to start the purchase process. And when the shopper clicks that button, they're rewarded with a really cool video that, hey, this is what you're going to go through. This is what the process is like. And again, we have to just always consider that our shoppers are part-time buyers. They don't know everything that we can do. We really want to put it in front of them. And we kind of touched on this earlier, which is ensuring consistency across different channels. Everybody's using multiple places to house their vehicle inventory to get as much exposure for potential shoppers as possible. We are really encouraging that people just remember to make sure that pricing is consistent on whatever third-party vendor that you're using, but also that those prices match up exactly with what you have on your dealer website if they do get drawn to your own landing page. But almost just as important, probably most important than all of it, is that what they see online, again, matches the experience that they have in their showroom. And that's what we talk about when we're saying connecting the dots from the offline to the online experience. We want to be super respectful of time, and we want to be respectful of David's time as well. So we're going to wrap up here. We'd like to extend a sincere thank you. Eric?
Yeah, thanks so much, David, for having us, and really appreciate being able to go over our material today.
Director of Communications. So Eric's going to field the questions, and it looks as though, Eric, we already have one queued up for you. So welcome aboard, and Chelsea will throw out a question for you.
Sure, sounds good.
So the question is that obviously it's one thing to offer guaranteed value to the customer. And like Matt said in his presentation, there's that emotional connection when they're involved with their cars, which is why there's a perceived higher value. So how does TrueCar's guaranteed valuation address that factor? And so it's a two-part question, so I'll let you answer that first and then come in with the second.
Yeah, sure. It's a really good question. I think number one and most importantly is just really explaining how we got to that value. So specifically when you look at TrueCar, when we're giving consumers a value, we're explaining how we got there. And if they have a higher expectation, they can then do a little bit more research to determine, okay, here's why. And if it has to do with the vehicle condition, everything down to the color, we were able to get to this value. Now, the important thing to note is it's TrueCar that's providing the value. And I think this might tie into your second part of the question, but we're kind of like the bad guys here where, for you and your dealership, if this is what a consumer is bringing in for a true cash offer, a TrueCar trade value, that's kind of a third party offer. And we encourage you to leverage that. So more specifically, but really most importantly is just explaining how we got there so consumers can really understand how we got to that value.
Great, because the second part was how are you supposed to explain that to the customer?
Yep, yeah, that's exactly it. So it really comes down to, and I think we mentioned this earlier, but the condition report. So, vehicle condition, what are some common problems and how can we dive into that to really explain, just getting to the value based on, supply and demand, how quickly we'd be able to sell that vehicle. So those are really important factors that tie into it.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so the question that was texted to me is, Eric, let me make sure I'm saying it correctly. How do you all have any research to differentiate between a consumer's behavior on a third-party remote retailing platform versus a dealership's remote retailing platform?
Yeah, that's a great question, and really, you know, when we find that consumers come to TrueCar, they could be at the research stage. They're at many different stages. When they get to your website, the actual dealer site, they've really narrowed down where they want to buy from. So it is a little bit different in terms of how you look at where the consumer is in the stage of their buying process. But in terms of the research that we do, we definitely dig into the different ways and different areas of where those customers are in terms of buying and what research they're doing. So if they're on our site and they're really just trying to figure out what vehicle they're interested in, that's one thing. But if they're on TrueCar or on your site specifically looking for a vehicle that they've already narrowed it down to, that's where you can really drill into some of the experiences that they'll find with digital retailing. So if they have a vehicle in mind and they've already narrowed that part down, the next steps are, if they have a trade, any sort of financing or lease payments, what's their credit and how easy can it be for them to fill out a credit application. All those really come into play and are really important factors, whether it's on the TrueCar site or any third-party site versus, the actual dealer website.
So the other question is, somebody heard me talk about the military program. One of the things that we heard earlier in the year and with the military relationship, or what could be construed there, what are you all doing about that, and what's the new military plan for you guys?
Yeah, great question. We've done a lot of cool stuff with our new military channel. We have a lot of new promotions out there, like Driven to Drive. We actually just, we launched something. It was yesterday for Veterans Day. But really what we're trying to do is bring together a whole new channel with different and specific incentives on our military channel to really drive specific, not only that traffic, but encourage any sort of consumer, whether they're a veteran, active military, to be able to go through that experience and have kind of that unique experience based on, our military channels and what our offerings are specifically. So there's a lot of cool stuff that we're working on. And if you go to TrueCar.com, you can see we have a separate page for it, our TrueCar military channel, which is really great. And I would encourage you all to check it out after this if you'd like.
Okay, cool. Chelsea?
Yes. So another question for you is, how does TrueCar evaluate or include the vehicle condition without actually seeing the vehicle, that maybe consumers are more positive in the condition grades that obviously they're able to input into the system? So then, of course, what happens then when a consumer comes in and the condition's not correct, or, equipment doesn't match?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. It comes down to the dealer having to verify the specific condition. So what we're doing is we're basically sending in a lead. We'll send the lead with a trade, and we'll break down what the consumer said the vehicle condition is. It's up to the dealer to verify that condition. And as you're going through, whether you're verifying it in your current system and process or using the TrueCar trade system to be able to verify, as you make those adjustments based on, let's say the customer brought in their trade and the tires are shot. If you go into TrueCar or in your current systems and adjust that, it'll adjust the trade before we actually validate and verify the condition of that trade and the value that we've provided. So there's a little more that goes into it, but it's really, that's where we do and we encourage, a side-by-side appraisal with the consumer to really get them to see why we're getting to that value and show that condition report as a reason, behind, that actual value.
That makes sense. And then are you finding that people are accepting that because it says that, that there's some discretion, obviously, when they have the dealer evaluate, or are they really expecting that one value they were given?
If there's a reason behind how we're changing the value, and let's say, for that specific example, if they said their tires were excellent, and we can point it out to them and show them like, hey, based on its current tire tread, the condition of your tires, we're going to have to knock, a few $100s off. That's just one example, but
Sure.
there's many other examples that we've seen where consumers typically get it. And again, leveraging TrueCar as we're the ones that have put the value there. It's up to the dealer to verify, and really be able to leverage your current systems for that. But more specifically, it's really important to that's what we encourage, the side-by-side appraisal, really that walk around with the consumer to really point out and show them how we're getting to that specific value.
Great. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, so Eric, a question came in from obviously an advanced user that says we do live video like a Zoom type thing. They use a tool that DriveCentric CRM has to where they actually are kind of zooming with their guests. You mentioned your background comes from digital retailing and working with that. Tell us a little bit about those kind of tricks of the trade that you're seeing from some of your top performers. Is it valuable to be on the same screen? One of our members of our Digital Marketing Managers 20 group said that they bought a vehicle via Vroom with one of their friends of the family. And Vroom, unlike some of the other digital retailing platforms, actually led the discussion forward, very similar to what Tim Cox was talking about with CarNow and their Drive Now product. Is they literally move forward with the guest. So tell us a little bit about what you've seen in remote retailing along those lines.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think a lot of it comes down to just really understanding where the consumer is at in terms of, are they just doing the initial research? Where are they in their specific stages? And David, I want to make sure I address your question the right way. So are you specifically referring to if it's a customer and, what are best practices for digital retailing in any part of that process, their car buying process?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really important thing. And I think the number one thing is just understanding where they're at. So if it's, research stage, how can we facilitate putting them in the right vehicle, and how do we do that remotely or virtually, and guiding them to make the right decision? So what I've found, consumers right now, they do a lot of research before they reach out. And a lot of times, a lot of those high committal call to actions that we either have on our dealer websites or even on TrueCar, it's to the point where the customer has already done a whole lot of research where they're saying, okay, I'm ready for the next step. I'm ready for the dealer to reach out to me. I'm ready to make a phone call, or I'm ready to figure out, either what my payments are going to be or what kind of deal I'm going to get on this vehicle. So in terms of best practices, it really comes down to understanding each individual consumer, where they're at in the process. And I see a lot of different retail strategies out there where no matter where that customer is at in the process, we might start them at the very beginning every time. It's important that we look at it and I've heard the term a lot, like an omni-channel experience, where they can start at any part of that flow in terms of their car buying process remotely, whether they have configured payments and they don't have a trade, but we need to figure out what their credit is to be able to run accurate payments on them. That's where it comes down to just understanding where they're at in the process and then guiding them through the right and facilitating that process of all things digital retail.
Good. I think they'll be pleased with that answer. All right, Chelsea, another question?
Yes. So someone said, is TrueCar recommending that all prices, match online? And then is that a deviation from the prior TrueCar requirement that a dealer offer a better price for TrueCar partner needs?
So the first part of the question, recommending that online prices match. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes.
Is that in terms of do you know if it's in terms of payments? And I'm trying to figure out what we mean by match here.
I'm assuming it's coming from, and I don't have too much.
Let's just say it's the price. So, just a static price. So the essence of the question is kind of like other buying clubs or whatever. There used to be a Costco that, they do an audit, and if a Costco price was not $100 lower, then the dealer was in jeopardy. And TrueCar's talked about that in the past. I don't know what the audit practices are, but that's the essence of the question.
Yep, that makes sense. And I think number one, just to as a kind of a disclaimer, we're not, or at least I'm not encouraging anyone to completely change up their pricing strategy. But what I would encourage, and I think is important, is the consistent messaging. So it depends kind of how we're thinking about pricing vehicles, whether it's on TrueCar or on your site. That consistent messaging is important to build trust with consumers. So if they see a price on your site and or on TrueCar, any other third-party sites, if they see different pricing, that's where they might question, where can I get the best deal? If they see consistent pricing, and not just pricing, but I look at this in terms of payments as well, because I think payments are just as important. If they see that consistent messaging across different channels, that's where I think they start building trust with you and your brand for your dealership. So I hope that answers the question. And again, I'm not, I'm not going to, push, or at least me personally, say you have to have this as your pricing strategy. But we do think it's important. I think it's important for that consistent messaging.
Good, excellent. Chelsea, unfortunately, we're out of time for questions. Eric, you've been a true gentleman. We appreciate that. And thank you so much for joining us with your expertise today.
Of course, David. Thanks so much for having me.
You're sure welcome. Tell Matt hi.